my GF had with two friends of mine. To be fair, she claims this occurred before we met. We live in a small neighborhood where everybody knows everybody. That, believe it or not, is not the fundamental problem here. Before we got serious, we had a conversation. I personally questioned her about them, and she originally maintained that nothing had occurred. However, I am aware of extremely delicate things. Once, one of those buddies came over, and after the usual introductions, he put his hands around her waist rather suggestively for a little period, and her countenance indicated no abnormality. I eventually approached her and pretended to know. I wasn't sure at the time. I was fishing. She told me to my face that something almost occurred between them but never did, and that it happened before we met. I lived out of town a lot. I didn't want to dig any farther, so I elected to leave the subject to rest since I actually care about her. Yes, I'm still with her. She came to see me in February. We work in separate areas, and when I got in, it was far too easy, if you know what I mean. So I restrained my tongue. Anyway, in March, my head told me to go fishing again, so I opted to ignore her calls and messages. When I informed her what was wrong, she asked what was wrong, and I told her she understood very well. She remained silent for another 2 weeks before telling me that she had also slept with my second buddy. Actually, she said he kissed her. It's worth noting at this point that she never explicitly admitted to having with them. She waited until I said, "I know you've slept with him," and then she'd say, "Only once, and that was before we met." We can't change our history, that's a given, but the fact that she continues lying about it irritates me. Is it possible that I'm reading too much into nothing? Story 2. I, 29 female, keep finding long hairs in my bathroom, which is strange because my husband, 32F, is bald and I have a short pixie crop hairstyle. This began a few weeks ago. While cleaning the bathroom, I discovered some long hair strands on the bathroom wall near the shower. This struck me as weird since not only does my spouse not have hair, but I also have extremely cut, short hair. As a result, the strands I discovered cannot be mine or my husband's. Confused, I cleaned them away, but couldn't get them out of my head. I opted not to discuss anything, but I did keep an eye out for them. There seems to be a pattern of hairs emerging whether I'm at work or out for an extended amount of time. I feel like I'm going insane, and I don't want to quickly accuse my husband of cheating on me with a longer-haired lady. When I questioned my husband about it, he just shrugged. Which makes me even more suspicious, since certainly this is weird, so why is he so blasé about it? I'm beginning to suspect he's downplaying things to keep me from discovering the truth. It occurred again 2 days ago, so I questioned my spouse once again. He ignored it again, although this time he conceded it was weird, but that the only explanation was that they were my hairs. They aren't, and now that I'd said it, he'll simply dismiss me if I bring it up again. I don't want to presume my husband is cheating on me and accuse him of it over something so little, but I'm driving myself insane trying to figure out how the hairs got there without my husband dismissing it as nothing. We haven't had any visits that I'm aware of during lockdown, therefore his sister is out. Update. I eventually opted against installing a hidden camera since I didn't want to break my partner's confidence, though a part of me wanted to acquire one to alleviate any fears of someone living inside my walls, as several comments suggested. I did, however, intend to leave work early, something I had never done before. My supervisor gave me permission to go after a half day. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary when I returned home. I was expecting to see another vehicle on the drive or parked on the street. There was no other vehicle that I didn't recognize. I was instantly perplexed after quietly allowing myself in. There was a pair of shoes in the hallway that I didn't recognize, and they seemed like men's shoes. My husband came out of the kitchen with 2 cups of tea as I was standing in the hallway trying to figure out what to do, if I should sneak around or make my presence known. My husband's expression indicated that he was startled to see me. To add to my naivete, I questioned my husband how he could have known I was coming home early to prepare me tea. My spouse astonished me by sitting me down and explaining everything, even though I expected him to lie. At the start of the lockdown, his buddy, whom I'm not very friendly with since we just met once, had been evicted, had lost his job, and had been couch surfing. So for the last several weeks, this man has been coming to our home and, with my husband's permission, using our restroom to freshen up before going to interviews. He was also borrowing my husband's clothes and suits. My husband's acquaintance, it turns out, has long hair and a beard. So it turns out that my husband wasn't cheating on me, but rather was concealing the fact that his long-haired pal was coming over to use our shower. I ended up meeting Dave after his shower, and he turned out to be a pretty decent person who was simply down on his luck. I wished him luck for his socially distant interview, and he continued on his way. I questioned my spouse why he didn't simply tell me, since I wouldn't have minded. He was concerned about my response and the fact that I didn't like his buddy or approve of the scenario. He also said Dave was ashamed by the situation and didn't want anyone to know what he was going through. I told my husband I was beginning to suspect he was cheating, and he was taken aback, having not even considered the ramifications while trying to cover for his pal. I told him the entire thing was ludicrous and even proposed that his buddy stay with us until he could get back on his feet. Surprisingly, my worst-case scenario, as described in the responses, was either a homeless guy or lady living inside my walls and secretly utilizing the shower. And although this seems to be partly the case, I'm pleased it wasn't a stranger who was unwanted and wasn't living inside my walls. Story 3. Is there a chance for reconciliation after I, 20 female, caught my boyfriend, 20 male, of 3 years talking to someone behind my back? Thank you for reading this despite the fact that my relationship is brief and probably minor in comparison to all the decades-long marriages on here. I'll try to make this as brief as possible, but I just discovered my partner cheating. He's a nursing student, and I discovered he'd been messaging one of his classmates behind my back. It was merely flirting and showed no signs of attempting to establish a relationship, but they were only 2 weeks in. I know he isn't stupid enough to go for that right away, but nevertheless, he did contact her on my birthday. Then just after dropping me off, he got out his phone and texted her. There was a lot of other obvious flirtation. When we were out, he'd say he was going to pick up some dinner, and then contact her when he came home. We had a major altercation. He says he didn't tell me about it because he was afraid I'd freak out. He also said that he did not believe it was anything awful at the time. Also, my grandmother is dying of terminal cancer, and he is aware that I am in the trenches. Anyway, after a week of bickering and me calling him every term under the sun and interrogating him mercilessly, he was eager to interact and respond to my queries. I had to push him for a week, asking him what he wanted with her and what he felt was lacking in our relationship. I eventually got him to be honest, and he said that all he needed was attention and approval. He said that our relationship is great and that he appreciated the attention she showed him. He claimed to have no affections for her. He said that there was nothing wrong with me and that he did not want to have anything to do with her. There has been a lot of crying and apologizing. My main fear is